Revenge with Karen.
I knew the company was heading for digital cliff the moment Gavin walked in wearing a vest that cost more than my first car and smelling like sandalwood and unearned confidence. He didn't look at the server racks. He looked at the reflection of his own teeth in the glass partition. To a man like Gavin, infrastructure wasn't a foundation. It was just plumbing, unsexy, invisible, and annoying when it cost money. I was standing by the cooling units, hum of the fans drowning out his introductory speech about disruptive synergy to the marketing team, but I could feel the shift in the air pressure. It wasn't the weather. It was the sudden drop in IQ in the executive wing. I'm Susan. For 8 years, I've been the senior backend oversight lead for a SAW company that handles data sensitive enough to make a frantic lawyer sweat through a wool suit. My job isn't to code features that make buttons pop with confetti. My job is to make sure that when 10 million people log in at once, the digital floor doesn't collapse into the basement of 404 errors. I'm the janitor of the internet, the mechanic who tells you that, no, you cannot put a jet engine on a Honda Civic just because it looks cool. But Gavin was all jet engine. By the way, if you enjoy watching corporate trains derail in slow motion while sipping your morning coffee, me a quick favor and hit subscribe, and maybe give this a like. It helps the algorithm find more people who appreciate the fine art of professional disaster, and frankly, it keeps me motivated to type this out instead of throwing my laptop into the Hudson River. Thanks. The trouble started small, as it always does. It wasn't an explosion. It was a series of skipped maintenance tickets. Gavin's first executive order was to trim the fat in the engineering department. In his mind, fat meant anyone who wasn't shipping new features every 48 hours. He looked at my team, the people who handled database sharding, load balancing, and compliance encryption, and saw dead weight. We were the no department. He wanted a yes department. Susan, he said to me during our first one-on-one, leaning back in a chair that was ergonomically designed for people who actually do work. I feel like your team is stuck in 2018. We need velocity. We need to move fast and break things. If we break things, Gavin, I said, my voice flat, holding onto my coffee mug like it was a holy relic, our clients lose financial records. We aren't Facebook. We are holding the digital wallets of half the Fortune 500. If we break things, get sued into the Stone Age. He blinked, that slow, cow-like blink of a man who has heard words but hasn't processed meaning. Right, compliance. But let's automate the compliance, yeah? I'm bringing in some consultants, high-energy guys. They worked with me at my last startup. They're going to help you. Loosen up the pipes. Loosen up the pipes is tech speak for remove the safety valves so the sewage flows faster. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It's a specific sensation I haven't felt since the great outage of 2016. It's the premonition of a pager beeping at 3:00 a.m. on a Sunday. The consultants arrived a week later. They were clones of Gavin, wearing tighter pants, and carrying MacBooks covered in stickers for crypto exchanges that had already gone bankrupt. They didn't ask for documentation. They didn't ask for the system architecture maps. They just asked for root access. Can't give you root access until you pass the security clearance, I told them. Gavin said we have carte blanche, one of them said, smirking. His name was probably Tyler or Skylar, or something that rhymes with failure. Gavin can say the moon is made of cheese, but until IT security clears you, your guests, I replied. I walked away, feeling their eyes drilling holes into my back. I knew I had just put a target on myself. I was the friction. It was the legacy mindset. That night, at 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a frantic automated alert from the primary database cluster. High latency. Packet loss. Something was eating the bandwidth. I logged in from my home office, a quiet room in Brooklyn that smelled of old books and lemon polish, and saw it. Someone had deployed a new microservice to production without going through the staging environment. It was a social feature nobody asked for, and it was querying the entire user database every 3 seconds. It was sloppy, it was dangerous, and it had Gavin's authorization code attached to the override. I killed the process. I rolled back the update. I saved the system from a cascading failure that would have wiped out service for the entire East Coast. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from excitement, but from rage. We're playing with live grenades in a munitions depot. The next morning at the daily stand-up, Gavin walked in beaming. Great work on the new social deployment, guys. We saw a massive spike in activity last night. The spike in activity was the server screaming for mercy. I had to roll it back, Gavin, I said, cutting through the applause. It was crashing the load balancers. It wasn't optimized. The room went silent. Gavin's smile didn't drop, but his eyes went cold. The look of predator realizing the prey has teeth. Susan, he said, his voice dripping with condescending patience, you have to stop focusing on the problems. We're celebrating wins here. Maybe if you spent less time rolling things back and more time leaning in, we'd be further along. That was the moment. The uneasy calm was over. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was an obstacle. And Gavin was the type of man who didn't drive around obstacles. He ran them, but he didn't know that I wasn't a speed bump. I was a spike strip, and I was already starting to take screenshots. The freeze-out didn't happen all at once. It was a gradual lowering of the temperature, like being locked in a walk-in freezer where the dial is nudged down 1 degree every hour. You don't realize you're hypothermic until you can't move your fingers. It started with the calendar invites. For 8 years, I had been a mandatory attendee for the Architecture Review Board. It was the Tuesday morning mass where we confessed our sins and prayed to the gods of uptime. 2 weeks after the rollback incident, I logged in to find my Tuesday morning wide open. No meeting. I messaged the project manager, a nervous woman named Janet, who survived by blending into the beige wallpaper. Hey Janet, is the ARB canceled this week? Oh, hi Susan, the reply came, ellipsis pulsing for an agonizingly long time. No, Gavin restructured the meeting. It's called the Innovation Sprint now. He said it's for ideation leads only. He didn't want to waste your time since you handle the legacy stuff. Legacy stuff. That was the new label. I wasn't the senior backend oversight lead anymore. I was the curator of a museum nobody wanted to visit. I walked past the glass-walled conference room later that morning. Inside, Gavin was standing on the table, literally standing on the mahogany table, drawing erratic circles on a whiteboard. The consultants were nodding furiously. My team, the senior engineers who actually knew how the code worked, were absent. Instead, the room was filled with junior developers and product managers who thought scalability was just a buzzword you put in a pitch deck. They looked like they were planning a frat party, not a software deployment. Came the physical displacement. Susan, great news. HR pinged me on Slack. We're redesigning the floor plan to encourage organic collisions and cross-pollination. We're moving your desk closer to the server room so you can be near the hardware you love so much. Translation: we are moving you to the back corner, next to the noisy AC intake and the bathroom, where nobody will see you. I packed my box. My ergonomic chair, my dual monitors, my carefully organized stack of documentation. I moved to the Siberia of the office. It was darker back there, the air stale, but from my new vantage point, I had a direct line of sight to the main network patch panel. It was poetic, really. They pushed me into the shadows, forgetting that the shadows are where you see everything. Gavin stopped making eye contact in the hallway. If we passed, he would suddenly become engrossed in his phone, typing furiously at nothing. The emails kept coming, passive-aggressive masterpieces copied to the entire leadership team. From Gavin to engineering all subject, speed bumps team, I've noticed some drag on our deployment velocity. We seem to be getting hung up on risk assessment protocols that are outdated. We need to trust our talent. I'm authorizing a new streamlined approval process. Let's not let the naysayers hold us back. He didn't name me. Everyone knew who the naysayer was. He was isolating me, painting me as the bitter old guard who hated progress. He was turning the company culture against competence. I sat in my dark corner and watched the metrics. The new streamlined process meant they were skipping code reviews. Error rates were creeping up. 0.5% increase in failed logins, 1.2% increase in database timeouts. Small numbers to a CEO, but to me, were cracks in the dam. I started eating lunch alone at my desk. Before, I would join the other leads, but now, sitting with me was a political liability. I saw people I had mentored, people I had hired, look away when I entered the break room. I didn't blame them. Mortgage payments don't care about loyalty, but the isolation gave me something valuable: time and focus. Since they weren't inviting me to meetings, didn't have to listen to Gavin blather on about AI-driven synergies. I had 8 hours a day to dig. I started auditing the third-party integrations Gavin's pet consultants were pushing through. One afternoon, I found a bill, a monthly invoice for a cloud optimization tool that cost $40,000 a month. I'd never heard of it. I dug into the vendor details. The company had been formed 3 months ago. The registered address was a P.O. box in Delaware. CEO of this vendor? A guy named Chadwick, who just happened to be in a lot of Gavin's college fraternity photos on Facebook. I printed the invoice. I didn't run to HR. HR works for the company, and right now the company was Gavin. I folded the paper and put it in my bag. Susan, I looked up. It was Jason, a junior dev, barely 22. He looked pale. He was holding a laptop like it was a ticking bomb. I think I messed up, he whispered, glancing around to see if anyone was watching him talk to the pariah. Gavin told me to push the new payment gateway API. He said we didn't need to run the regression tests because it was low risk. But, Susan, the transaction logs are looking weird. I motioned for him to pull up a chair. Show me. He opened his screen. I scanned the raw logs. My blood ran cold. The new gateway was dropping encryption headers on 5% of transactions. Wasn't just a bug, it was a massive security leak. Credit card numbers were passing through in plain text for split seconds. Fix it, I said quietly. Roll it back, now. But Gavin said, I don't care what Gavin said. If this leaks, we go to prison. Do you look good in orange, Jason? He shook his head, terrified. Roll it back. I'll take the heat. He did. The error log stopped. The system stabilized. 10 minutes later, Gavin stormed out of his office, his face red. He marched straight to my corner, the consultants trailing behind him like hyenas. Did you authorize a rollback on the payment gateway? He demanded, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. Yes, I said, not standing up. I kept typing. That was a strategic deployment. You are undermining my authority. That deployment was leaking credit card data, Gavin, I said, turning to face him. I saved us from a class action lawsuit. He sneered. You're paranoid. It was a glitch. You're reacting to ghosts because you're scared of the future. He leaned in close, smelling of mints and aggression. You're on thin ice, Susan, very thin. Next time you touch my deployments, you won't just be moved to the corner. You'll be moved to the street. He spun around and walked away. The office was dead silent. I turned back to my monitor. My hands weren't shaking. I opened a terminal window. kdir/home/Susan/hidden logs, chmod 700/home/Susan/hidden logs if he wanted a war. He was going to get one. But he wouldn't see the soldiers. My soldiers were lines of code, and they were already marching. The air in the office had changed from anxious to toxic. It felt like walking through a mist of electrified nervous sweat. The rollback incident hadn't just angered Gavin, it had embarrassed him. Men like Gavin treat embarrassment like a mortal wound that can only be healed by the destruction of the witness. I knew a setup was coming. You work in corporate America long enough, you learn the rhythm of the hit job. It's never a direct firing. That costs money in severance and unemployment hearings. No, they want you to quit, or they want cause. They need a catastrophe they can pin on your chest like a scarlet letter. It arrived on a Thursday. Thursday is the coward's day for disasters. It gives them Friday to spin the narrative and the weekend to let the outrage die down. Gavin called an emergency product sync. I wasn't invited, naturally, but the walls in our office were glass, and sound travels through AC ducts if you know where to listen. They were launching the AI customer assistant at 2:00 p.m. I knew the code for this assistant, had reviewed the early pull requests before my access was throttled. It was a hastily cobbled-together wrapper around a generic language model, with 0 safeguards for database query limits. Basically, if a customer asked the bot to list all my transactions for the last 10 years, the bot would try to do it. Instantly, for every customer. I checked the server load. It was already running at 75% capacity because of the unoptimized social features from last month. At 1:55 p.m., I sent an email to Gavin, CCing the CTO, who was currently on a sabbatical in Bali and probably not reading, and the head of legal. Subject, urgent warning AI deployment Gavin, based on previous load tests. Current infrastructure cannot handle the projected query volume of the AI assistant without caching. We risk a total backend lockup. I strongly recommend delaying until we scale the read replicas. I hit send. It was my paper shield. At 2:00 p.m., Gavin pressed the button. I saw him do it. He high-fived Chad the consultant. They popped a bottle of champagne. At 2:03 p.m., the dashboard on my second monitor turned from green to yellow. At 2:05 p.m., it turned red. At 2:06 p.m., the silence in the office was shattered by the Slack notification sound. It wasn't the polite ding. It was the machine gun fire of 1,000 users reporting 502 bad gateway. The site was down, hard down. I sat on my hands. This was the hardest part. Every instinct in my body screamed to open the terminal, kill the pods, and reroute the traffic. But I couldn't. If I touched it, became my outage. Susan, Gavin was running towards my corner. He wasn't slick anymore. He was sweating. The site is down. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Gavin. I'm sitting here. You touched the load balancers. I saw your email. You tried to block the deployment and now you've sabotaged it. He was screaming, actually screaming. He was building the narrative in real time. He needed a villain and I was right there. Gavin, the database is locked. AI bot is DDoSing our own internal network. You need to kill the bot. No, the bot is key to the Q3 strategy. Fix the database, scale it, do your job. I can't scale a database that is being hammered by 1 million queries a second. Kill the bot. I am not killing the feature. You are incompetent. Fix it or you're done. He stormed back to the war room. I looked at the screen. Clients were calling. I could see the support ticket queue exploding. Cannot access payroll. Cannot export tax data. This wasn't just inconvenient. This was costing companies millions. I had a choice. Let it burn and prove him wrong, or save the company and let him blame me. I sighed. I'm a professional. I couldn't let the clients burn. I bypassed the standard controls. I logged directly into the AWS console using a backdoor admin key I kept for emergencies, one Gavin didn't know existed. I didn't kill the bot. Would check that. Instead, I throttled its bandwidth to 1%. To the outside world, the bot would just seem slow or thinking. But the database queries dropped instantly. The red dashboard turned yellow, then green. The site came back up. Gavin walked out of the war room 5 minutes later, looking triumphant. See, he shouted to the room. I told you it was a configuration issue. We pushed through. Susan finally did her job. He walked over to my desk, leaning down, his voice a low hiss. I know you tried to tank this launch. I know you throttled it to make me look bad. We're going to have a serious talk about your future on Monday. He didn't know I throttled it. He was guessing. But he was right about one thing. We were going to have a talk. I waited until he left for his victory dinner at 5:00 p.m. I stayed. I opened the raw logs from the incident. I found the timestamps. I found the specific queries that crashed the system. And then I found something else. In the chaos of the crash, while the security protocols were failing, someone had executed a bulk export of user data. Not the bot, a user. I traced the IP address. It matched the cloud optimization vendor from the fake invoice. Gavin wasn't just incompetent. He, or his friends, were stripping the copper wiring out of the walls while the house was burning. Humiliation washed away, replaced by a cold, steely resolve. I wasn't sad anymore. I was hunting. I didn't just save the logs. I mirrored the entire production environment's activity stream to a private, encrypted server in my basement. Every keystroke, every query, every login. You want a legacy, Gavin? I whispered to the empty office. I'll build you a monument. There's a specific kind of silence that falls over an office when everyone knows a predator is feeding, but nobody wants to look at the blood. That was the atmosphere in the weeks following the AI crash. Gavin was riding high on the success of the launch, spinning the temporary outage as unprecedented demand. The board ate it up. They saw charts going up and to the right. They didn't see the structural cracks widening underneath. I became a ghost in my own department. I stopped speaking in meetings unless directly asked a yes or no question. I stopped offering advice. I stopped fixing the coffee machine when it jammed. I simply existed, a quiet figure in the corner, typing rhythmically. They thought I was cowed. They thought I was updating my resume or playing solitaire. In reality, I was building the panopticon. I spent my nights coding a custom dashboard. Not the flashy, colorful dashboards Gavin loved, full of vanity metrics and pie charts that meant nothing. Mine was ugly. It was black text on a dark gray background, terminal font, raw data. I called it the truth. I aggregated everything. I pulled the Git commit logs to show that Gavin's consultants were pushing code with 0 peer reviews. I pulled the AWS billing API to visualize the skyrocketing costs of their optimization. Pulled the security audit logs to track every time Gavin authorized a policy override. But the centerpiece was the uptime lie. Gavin's reports to the board claimed 99.99% uptime. He achieved this by redefining uptime. If the login page loaded, he counted it as up. even if the backend database was on fire and no one could actually do anything. My dashboard pinged the actual services every 10 seconds, calculated the real uptime. Real uptime, 84.2%. For an enterprise SaaS company, 84% isn't bad. It's a breach of contract. It's refund territory. It's death. I felt like a detective in a noir film, sitting in a staked-out car, drinking cold coffee, watching the suspect dig a hole in the desert. One Tuesday, I caught a break. Gavin was presenting to the board of directors via Zoom. He was in the main conference room, was at my desk, listening in through the open door. He liked to hear his own voice echo. As you can see, Gavin boomed, our transition to the new architecture is seamless. We've reduced headcount costs in the legacy maintenance sector, that was me, and reallocated budget to AI growth. I accessed the internal network traffic. I saw the connection to the board's secure portal. It was a standard read-only interface where board members could see high-level stats. I had an idea. Dangerous, career-ending idea. I couldn't just tell them, they wouldn't believe me. I was the disgruntled employee, Gavin was the golden boy, they needed to see it. I wrote a script, a simple packet injection script. I found the endpoint that fed the board's dashboard. I didn't hack the board, I hacked our feed to them. I created a shadow channel. I didn't activate it yet. That was for the end game. I just installed the plumbing. A tiny, dormant line of code that, triggered, would swap Gavin's fake charts with my truth dashboard. I tested it locally. It worked perfectly. One keystroke and the illusion would shatter. Susan, I jumped. It was Linda from HR. She didn't look happy. She was holding a clipboard. Can we have a quick chat? I locked my screen instantly. Sure, Linda. We walked to a small, windowless room. Linda didn't sit down. We've had some reports, she said, not meeting my eyes. About your attitude, negativity, resistance to change. Gavin feels like you aren't aligning with the new vision. I saved the database from collapsing last Thursday, Linda. Is keeping the company alive not aligned with the vision? See that, she pointed her pen at me. That tone, it's combative. We're putting you on a performance improvement plan. A PIP, the corporate kiss of death. It's the formal paperwork they need to fire you without getting sued. It's a list of impossible goals designed to be failed. See, I said. I felt calm. Strangely calm. What are the goals? You need to improve your collaborative score by 50%. You need to fully document the legacy system for the new team. And you need to sign off on the full handover of administrative root access to the consultancy group by Friday. There it was. The kill shot. They wanted the keys to the kingdom, and they wanted me to dig my own grave before they pushed me in. If I sign this, I asked, does it guarantee my employment? It's a step in the right direction, Linda said, smiling that fake, thin-lipped HR smile. I'll sign it, I said. Linda looked surprised. She expected a fight. She expected tears. I signed the paper. I'll have the documentation ready. I walked back to my desk. They thought they had cornered a rat. They didn't realize they had just handed the arsonist a box of matches. Giving the consultants root access was suicide for the system, would destroy it within a week. But that was the timeline I needed. I sat down and opened my terminal. I updated the truth dashboard. I added a new widget, countdown to critical failure. Based on the consultant's code quality, I estimated the system had about 6 days before a catastrophic, unrecoverable data corruption event. The board meeting was in 5 days. I had to keep the patient alive just long enough to die on stage. The moment I signed the PIP, the countdown clock in my head started ticking in sync with the one on my secret dashboard. But Gavin, emboldened by my apparent surrender, decided to speed things up. He didn't just want me managed, he wanted me neutered. Wednesday morning, 2 days before the big board meeting, I tried to log into the primary oversight console. Access denied. I tried my backup admin credentials. Access denied. I stared at the blinking cursor. He had revoked my access early. He had violated the terms of the PIP before the ink was even dry. Hey, a voice cracked behind me. It was Jason again, the junior dev. He looked like he hadn't slept in 48 hours. His eyes were red-rimmed and he was clutching a Red Bull like a lifeline. Susan, I can't fix it, he whispered. Fix what, Jason? The replication lag, the consultants. Tyler. He changed the sync settings, said we needed real-time analytics for Gavin's demo prep. He turned off the safety buffers. My stomach dropped. Safety buffers exist for a reason. Without them, if a glitch happens in the main database, it instantly corrupts the backup. It's like removing the fuse from a stick of dynamite because you think the fuse looks ugly. Jason, if the buffers are off, any write error becomes permanent across all clusters. You need to revert it. I can't. His voice rose to a panicked squeak. I don't have the permission level. Only the senior lead does, and your account is locked. I looked over at Gavin's glass office. He was laughing, feet up on the desk, throwing a foam football with Chad. They were celebrating their total control. They had locked me out to stop me from interfering, and in doing so, they had locked themselves inside a burning building with no exit. Did you tell them? I asked Jason. I tried. Tyler told me to stop being a nervous Nelly, and that latency is a mindset. Latency is a mindset. I almost laughed. It was so absurdly stupid it sounded like something from a satirical novel. Okay, Jason, listen to me. Go back to your desk. Document everything you just told me in an email. Send it to yourself, to me, and print a physical copy. Then do nothing. Do not touch the code. If it crashes, let it crash. But the data. It's not your data anymore, Jason. It's Gavin's data. Let him own it. He nodded, terrified, and scurried away. I sat there, powerless. For the first time in 8 years, I couldn't save the system. I watched my private truth dashboard. The metrics were screaming. The replication lag was climbing exponentially. 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds. The system was beginning to dissociate. Users in California were seeing data from 5 minutes ago. Users in New York were overriding data that hadn't synced yet. It was a silent data corruption event, the kind that isn't noticed until a CFO opens a spreadsheet and realizes $1 million is missing. Then the phone rang. It wasn't my desk phone. It was my personal cell. Is this Susan? A gruff, unfamiliar voice. Speaking. This is Marcus from the board. We're seeing some irregularities in the quarterly report preview Gavin sent over. He says it's a data rendering issue on our end. Is that true? My heart stopped. A direct line from a board member. They never called staff. Gavin must be stonewalling them hard. Mr. Marcus, I said, keeping my voice steady. I am currently locked out of the system by executive order. I cannot verify any data rendering issues. Silence on the line. Locked out, you're the oversight lead. Not anymore, apparently. Been placed on a performance plan and my credentials were revoked this morning. I see. The voice was cold, hard granite. And if you could see the data, what would you expect to see? I took a breath. This was it. I could lie, be a good soldier, and maybe keep my severance. Or I could light the fuse. I would expect to see a replication lag of over 45 seconds, leading to severe data corruption in the financial tables. Would also expect to see that the rendering issue is actually the database choking on unauthorized third-party scrapers. Another silence. Longer this time. Be at the office tomorrow, Susan, for the all-hands meeting. I wasn't invited, sir. You are now. The line went dead. I put the phone down. My hands were shaking, just a little, not from fear, from adrenaline. I looked at my screen. I had one access point left. They had revoked my system admin rights. They had forgotten about the town hall broadcast system. It was an old internal tool used to stream meetings to remote employees. I had built it 5 years ago. I still had the master key for the AV setup. Gavin was planning to fire me live, or at least humiliate me, at the all-hands. He wanted a show. I was going to give him one. I spent the rest of the afternoon prepping the script. I wasn't just going to redirect the board's dashboard anymore. I was going to redirect the entire presentation. I packed my bag at 5:00 p.m. exactly. As I walked out, Gavin caught my eye. He smirked and made a cut-throat gesture, then laughed. I smiled back, a genuine, warm smile. He looked confused. He stopped laughing. He should have been terrified. The night before the all-hands meeting, I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment, the glow of my monitors illuminating the room like a cockpit. I was running simulations. If I did this, there was no going back. This wasn't just whistleblowing. This was a corporate coup d'etat staged with code. I checked the script one last time. It was elegant in its simplicity. Gavin's presentation ran on a web-based slide deck platform. The company used a localized caching server to ensure smooth playback during the livestream. My script, which I had embedded in the AV systems maintenance cron jobs years ago, a habit of over-engineering that finally paid off, would detect when the Q3 financials slide was triggered. Instead of loading slide 14 revenue growth JPG, it would force the projector and the live stream to pull a live feed from my truth dashboard. It was a digital sleight of hand. I arrived at the office at 8:00 a.m. The atmosphere was electric, but in the wrong way. The air before a tornado touches down. Innovation consultants were high-fiving, wearing matching branded hoodies that said Disrupt. My team, the legacy engineers, looked like they were attending a funeral. Gavin had ordered a catered breakfast. Bagels, lox, the works. It was the Last Supper vibe. He stood near the coffee station, holding court. "Big day, everyone," he announced, his voice booming. "Today we turn the page. We shed the dead weight and blast off." Looked directly at me when he said dead weight. I poured myself a black coffee. I didn't take a bagel. I went to my desk in the corner. I opened the AV control panel on my hidden terminal window. Status, online, trigger, armed. At 9:50 a.m., the entire company gathered in the main atrium. The remote employees, hundreds of them, were logged into the stream. The board of directors was dialed in on the massive main screen, their faces looming like judges in a sci-fi tribunal. I saw Marcus, the board member who had called me. He wasn't looking at the camera, he was looking down at his notes. Gavin took the stage. He had a headset microphone. He looked like a TED Talk presenter on steroids. "Welcome, team. Welcome, board." Gavin started pacing the stage. "When I joined 6 months ago, I promised you a revolution. I promised to trim the fat, to modernize, clear out the cobwebs of the past." He clicked the clicker. The screen behind him flashed a picture of a rocket ship. "And we have done it, despite the resistance." He paused for dramatic effect. "Despite the sabotage from those who fear change, we have achieved record efficiency." He was monologuing. He was loving it. I sat in the back row of chairs, my laptop open on my knees. I looked harmless, just taking notes. "But before we get to the numbers," Gavin said, voice dropping to a somber, serious tone, "we need to address accountability. We have had some technical issues recently. Outages, slowdowns, and we have identified the root cause." He clicked the next slide. It was a photo of my team's organizational chart. My name was circled in red. "The Legacy Oversight Team," Gavin said, pointing at the screen. "Refusal to adapt. Stubborn adherence to outdated protocols. Today, I am announcing a restructuring. Effective immediately. Oversight Department is being dissolved and replaced by our strategic partners at CloudOps." Gasps in the room. He was firing the entire department live on stage. My heart hammered, but my hand was steady. "And now," Gavin smiled, the shark sensing blood in the water, "let's look at the results of our new strategy. The numbers don't lie." He raised the clicker. "I present to you the Q3 metrics." He clicked. I hit enter. Gavin expected to see a bar graph showing a 20% reduction in server costs and a 99.9% uptime metric. That is not what appeared on the 20-foot screen behind him. Instead, the screen turned a stark, terminal black. Rows of neon green and blood red text began to scroll rapidly. System status, critical database integrity, 64% corrupted unauthorized data export detected, IP 45.33.22.11, source, Cayman Islands, real-time uptime, 81.4%. The room went silent. Not the polite silence of a presentation, but the vacuum silence of a car crash. Gavin turned around. He froze. He clicked the clicker frantically. Nothing happened. The data kept scrolling. Alert billing gateway encryption disabled by user. Gavin admin alert. 14,000 failed transactions in last hour alert. Shadow invoice detected vendor cloud opt $40,000/mono deliverables. What is this?" Gavin stammered. His confident baritone cracked into a falsetto. "Cut the feed. Cut the screen." He waved at the AV booth. The AV tech, a kid named Mike, who I had once helped fix a corrupted hard drive for, looked at the screen, then looked at me. I gave him a tiny, imperceptible nod. Mike took his hands off the console. He did nothing. "This is a hack," Gavin screamed, turning back to the audience, sweat instantly beading on his forehead. "We are being hacked. This is the sabotage I warned you about. Susan," he pointed at me in the back row, "she's doing this. She's attacking the company." I stood up. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. Room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the projector. "I'm not attacking the company, Gavin," I said, my voice carrying clearly. "I'm showing you the backend. That is the live production server. That is the reality you've been hiding." On the screen, the board of directors was watching. Marcus leaned into his camera. "Gavin," Marcus's voice boomed from the speakers, distorted but commanding. "Is that accurate? Are we seeing the live logs?" "No, it's fabricated. It's a simulation she built to discredit me." Gavin yelled, panic setting in. He looked at Chad and the consultants. They were already backing away towards the exit, looking at their phones. I tapped a key on my laptop. The screen changed. It showed the chat logs. Gavin's private Slack messages with Chad. Gavin, just override the safety checks. We need the speed for the demo. If it breaks, we blame Susan. Chad, what about the data loss? Gavin, who cares? I'll have cashed out the stock options by then. The gasp from the employees was audible this time. It was a collective intake of breath. Gavin looked at the screen. He looked at the board. He looked at me. He looked like a man who had just realized the parachute he packed was full of silverware. That's out of context, he whispered. It looks pretty clear from here, Marcus said from the screen. Mr. CEO, please step away from the podium. You can't do this. Gavin snapped, trying to regain his alpha composure. I am the CEO. I turned this company around. This is a mutiny. Actually, I said, walking slowly down the aisle toward the stage. It's a bug report, and I'm closing the ticket. I reached the front. I looked Gavin in the eye. He smelled of fear now, the sandalwood completely gone. You wanted to move fast and break things, Gavin, I said quietly. You broke it. Now get out of my way so I can fix it. I plugged my laptop directly into the podium's hardline. The screen flickered. Initiating emergency rollback, restoring backup from cold storage Susan secure, the red text turned yellow. Then, slowly, line by line, it started turning green. The room was frozen, suspended in that surreal space between catastrophe and salvation. The only sound was the clicking of my keyboard as I executed the restore scripts I had prepped days ago. Gavin was still standing there, paralyzed, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. He couldn't believe his narrative had collapsed so completely. He turned to the screen where the board members were watching. This is illegal, he shouted at the digitized faces. She hacked my private communications. This is corporate espionage. I demand she be arrested. Suddenly, the audio from the board's Zoom call cut out. The double doors at the back of the atrium burst open. Wasn't security coming for me. It was Marcus, the chairman of the board, in the flesh. He was flanked by 2 other board members and a team of people in sharp gray suits who radiated external council energy. They must have been in the building the whole time, waiting in a conference room upstairs. The room parted like the Red Sea as Marcus walked toward the stage. He was an older man, built like a retired linebacker, with a face carved out of granite. Didn't look at Gavin. He looked at the screen behind us, watching the green text propagate. System integrity restoring. Marcus read aloud. 90%. He finally turned to Gavin. Gavin, Marcus said, his voice deceptively calm. You're fired. You have to vote on that, Gavin stammered, his face pale. The bylaws say we voted 10 minutes ago, Marcus interrupted. While you were showing us the rocket ship slide, we're also watching the live feed Susan provided us with yesterday. Gavin whipped his head around to look at me. You were feeding them data? I'm the oversight lead, Gavin, I said, not looking up from my screen. I oversee. This is for cause, Marcus continued, gesturing to the lawyers. Gross negligence, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Security will escort you out. Leave your laptop and phone. 2 large security guards stepped out of the shadows. Weren't the regular lobby guards, these guys were hired muscle. Gavin tried to puff up his chest one last time. You'll hear from my lawyers. This company is nothing without my vision. Your vision cost us $40 million in potential liability, Marcus said. Get him out of here. As they dragged Gavin away, he was practically kicking and screaming about his vested options. The consultants tried to sneak out the side door. You 3. Marcus pointed a finger at Chad and his clones. Sit down. Legal wants a word about that $40,000 invoice for cloud optimization. They froze, then slumped into chairs like deflated balloons. Marcus walked up the steps to the podium. He stood next to me. Susan, he said, sir? I replied, typing the final command to lock the database. Is it stabilized? Replication lag is down to 0. Data integrity is verifying now. Lost about 3 hours of transactions from this morning, but I can reconstruct them from the raw logs I mirrored. You mirrored the logs? I didn't trust the primary server, sir. Marcus turned to the microphone. He looked out at the sea of terrified employees. Everyone, take a break. Go get a coffee. Take a walk. The all hands is over. We will reconvene at 2:00 p.m. with an update on leadership structure. But for now, he put a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and warm. Susan has some work to do, and I suggest we let her do it. The room erupted. It wasn't polite applause, it was a roar. The engineers, the support staff, the people who had been bullied and ignored for 6 months, they were cheering. Jason, the junior dev, was actually crying. I didn't wave. I didn't bow. I just felt a massive weight dissolve from my chest. "Thank you, sir," I whispered. "Don't thank me," Marcus murmured. Oh, enough so only I could hear. "You just saved my retirement fund. Now, fix this mess. On it." The next morning, the office felt different. The disrupt posters were gone, taken down by the cleaning crew overnight. The espresso machine was working again. I fixed it myself before I even sat down at my desk. My desk. When I arrived, my old desk in the main pod was back. My ergonomic chair, my dual monitors, everything had been moved out of the dark corner and reinstated in its rightful place. But someone had added something, a vase of flowers and a sticky note, to the firewall. "Thank you, the Eng team." I sat down and took a sip of coffee. Black, it tasted like victory. The company wiki had already been updated. The innovation sprint page was deleted. A new section titled Systems Transparency was up, and my name was listed as Chief Technical Officer Interim. I wasn't sure I wanted the title. Management meant meetings, and I hated meetings. But I realized that if I didn't take the wheel, another Gavin might come along. Sometimes, to keep the peace, you have to run the war room. Around 10 o'clock a.m., Marcus walked by. He didn't make a big show of it. He just leaned against my cubicle wall. "Gavin is being sued," he said casually. "And the consultants are facing fraud charges." Turns out that cloud optimization company was funneling money into a crypto wallet they all shared. "I figured," I said, not looking away from my code. The invoice looked like it was made in Microsoft Word 97. Marcus chuckled. "We're going to need to rebuild the team. Hire whoever you want. Budget is open. I want my old team back, and I want raises for the junior devs who stuck it out. Especially Jason. He tried to stop them." "Done," Marcus said. Pushed off the wall to leave, then paused. "You know, Susan, most people would have just quit. Why did you stay?" I stopped typing. I looked at the server room glass, watching the lights blink in that steady, hypnotic rhythm. Blue, green, blue, the heartbeat of the machine. "I built this system, Marcus," I said softly. "It's my code. You don't let arsonists burn down your house just because the landlord is an idiot." Marcus nodded. Look of genuine respect crossed his face. "Well, the house is yours now. Keep the lights on, always." He walked away. I put my headphones on. I opened a terminal window. Uptime system uptime, 24H12M04s. Perfect. I cracked my knuckles, took another sip of coffee, and got back to work. The chaos was over. The silence was back. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of a machine, running exactly the way it was supposed to.
Life has its storms, but it also has its calm waters. Thanks for sharing this moment with me. See you in the next one.